It all started with a garden gnome. His name was Barnaby. He was a cheerful little fellow with a bright red pointy hat, fishing pole perpetually cast over a small pond of decorative pebbles I'd arranged by my front azalea bush. I thought he added a touch of whimsy. The Pleasant Valley Estates Homeowners Association, led by its supreme leader, Brenda the Vengeance Henderson, deemed him a public blight and an eyesore detrimental to community property values. I found the notice tucked into my screen door one Tuesday. It wasn't just a note. It was a full-blown legalistic manifesto printed on HOA letterhead. Date: October 11th. Property: 123 Serenity Lane. Violation: Code 42.7.b. Prohibited lawn ornaments. Fine: $50. Additional $50 per day until violation is remedied. Description: unapproved, non-conforming, and aesthetically disruptive figurines present in the front lawn landscape. The Architectural Review Committee, ARC, has not pre-approved this item for display. You have 48 hours to remove the offending object. I chuckled. Seriously? A gnome? I'd seen smaller infractions get the nuclear treatment here. The wrong shade of beige on a shutter? Fine. A trash can left at the curb 2 hours past 10 a.m. on collection day? Fine. A child's bicycle abandoned on a driveway for an afternoon? You'd think they'd uncovered a meth lab. But I'm a reasonable guy. I figured it was a mistake. I sent a polite email to the HOA board, explaining that Barnaby was a gift from my niece and was, in my opinion, quite charming. I even attached a photo of him next to a blooming flower, looking particularly peaceful. The response was, not peaceful. From Brenda.Henderson@PleasantValleyHOA.org. Subject: violation #V7821. Mr. Evans, charm is subjective. The bylaws are not. The Pleasant Valley Estates Covenant, Conditions and Restrictions, CC and RS, which you agreed to upon purchase, clearly state that all external aesthetic modifications, including but not limited to statuary, fountains, and decorative objects, must be submitted for ARC approval. This gnome was not. This is not a matter for debate. It is a matter of compliance. The fine stands. The clock is ticking. Sincerely, Brenda Henderson, HOA President. I could feel the passive-aggressive energy radiating from the screen. This was no longer about a gnome. This was about power. I paid the $50 fine, but I did not remove Barnaby. Instead, I submitted an official ARC request form for his approval. I filled it out with the seriousness of a nuclear launch code application. Item description: 1. Resin garden gnome. Approximate 14-inch tall. Primary colors: red, blue, white. Proposed location: adjacent to azalea bush, north-facing side of property. Statement of aesthetic value: said gnome provides a focal point of pastoral tranquility and whimsical charm, believed to enhance the psychological well-being of passersby and potentially deter overly serious birds. A week later, my request was denied. The reason cited: style inconsistent with the Mediterranean revival architectural theme of Pleasant Valley Estates. This was hilarious because my house, like every other house here, was a beige-sided, vinyl-clad box with a faux stone facade. The only thing Mediterranean about it was that the previous owner had planted a rosemary bush that somehow survived. The fines started accumulating. $50 a day. I let them. I started a log. Day 1, gnome fine. Day 3, second notice. Day 5, fines now $250. I began recording every interaction. I took time-stamped photos of my perfectly manicured lawn, my compliant mailbox, my regulation-approved trash cans. I was building a case, though, for what I didn't yet know. Then Brenda upped the ante. I came home to find a second violation. Violation: Code 18.3. Unsanctioned flora.
Fine. $75.
Description: presence of clover in lawn. Lawn must consist of a minimum 90% Kentucky bluegrass or approved equivalent. Clover is considered a weed and is prohibited. They had literally come onto my property, gotten on their hands and knees, and inspected my lawn for clover. This was insanity. That weekend, I descended into the rabbit hole. I pored over the Pleasant Valley Estates CC and RS, a 120-page document of soul-crushing bureaucracy. I read about roof shingle granularity, fence post cap requirements, and the legally mandated curvature of my garden hose holder. And then, in the depths of Article 14, Section 3, I found it. The grandfather clause. It stated that any feature of the land itself that existed prior to the filing of the community's final plat map was exempt from all HOA regulations. A light bulb went off. A massive, blindingly bright light bulb. I spent the next evening at the county records office. I pulled the original plat maps, the land surveys, the property deeds. My grandfather, a wonderfully stubborn man, had owned over 100 acres out here. When he passed, the land was split. I got a 5-acre parcel, right in the heart of what would later become Pleasant Valley Estates. The developer bought the surrounding land from my cousins. But as I traced the lines on the old survey maps, my heart started pounding. The developer's surveyor had made a mistake. A glorious, beautiful, catastrophic mistake. The boundary line for my property wasn't where everyone thought it was. The entire northern section of the neighborhood, 98 homes, including the community pool and Brenda Henderson's own house, was not built on the developer's land. It was built on mine. I didn't say a word. I hired an independent, certified land surveyor to confirm it. He did, with a margin of error of inches. The original plat was wrong. The legal description in my deed was the correct one. For 15 years, the HOA had been maintaining the lawns, the streets, the pool, and the common areas on my private property. They had been enforcing rules on land they didn't own. I had them so completely, it was almost embarrassing. But I wasn't going to be a monster. I didn't want to evict 98 families. I just wanted my gnome, my clover, and my peace. So I decided to give them a chance. I requested a hearing at the next HOA board meeting to discuss my ongoing violations. The community clubhouse was packed. It seemed my little gnome saga had become the neighborhood's favorite soap opera. Brenda sat at the head of a long table, gavel in hand, looking like a judge about to sentence a murderer. She had a stack of my violation notices in front of her. "Mr. Evans," she began, her voice dripping with condescension, "you've racked up over $1,200 in fines for a garden gnome and an unapproved lawn composition. This board is prepared to place a lien on your home if you do not comply immediately. What could you possibly have to say for yourself?" I stood up, calm as could be. I had a simple manila folder with me. "Brenda, members of the board, neighbors, thank you for your time. I'd like to address the violations, starting with the root of the problem, property boundaries." A few people snickered. Brenda rolled her eyes. "This is not a boundary dispute, Mr. Evans. This is about rules." "Oh, I assure you, it's about boundaries," I said, pulling out the first document. "This is the original land survey from 1952, when my grandfather owned all this land." I held it up. "And this," I said, pulling out the second, "is the certified survey I had completed last week. It seems there was a significant error in the developer's original plat." I walked over and laid the two maps on the table in front of Brenda. I pointed to the thick, red line on my survey. "You see this line? According to the county recorder and the legal description in my deed, this is the true boundary of my property, which means that the land upon which 98 homes in this neighborhood are built, including the land under this clubhouse, the pool, and Brenda, your house at 456 Compliance Way, is not HOA common area." The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Brenda's face went from smug to confused, then to pale, ashen horror as she traced the line with her finger. That's impossible," she stammered. "It's very possible," I said softly. "For 15 years, this HOA has been trespassing. You've been maintaining my land, and you've been fining me for violations on my own property." Chaos erupted. People were shouting, pulling out their phones, demanding explanations. Brenda was sputtering, trying to regain control. But I wasn't done. I opened my manila folder one last time. But, Brenda, while we're on the topic of rules, I did a little more research. It's fascinating what you can find. For instance, your house. I turned to the crowd. Did you all know that Brenda's beautiful new pergola, the one she uses to host the board's summer parties, was never submitted to or approved by the ARC? Violation. She also has a shed in her backyard that exceeds the maximum square footage for auxiliary structures by 40 square feet. Violation. And my personal favorite, I said, pointing a finger at her lawn. I had it tested. It's a creeping red fescue blend, not the mandated Kentucky bluegrass. It's full of clover. I have photos. The crowd turned on her like a pack of wolves. The hypocrisy was too delicious. She had been fining them for the very things she was guilty of. You've been bullying this community, I said, my voice rising for the first time. Enforcing petty, ridiculous rules on land you don't even legally control, while breaking the major ones yourself on property that, technically, you're trespassing on. The fallout was swift and beautiful. Brenda Henderson was voted out as HOA president at an emergency meeting the following week. She resigned from the board entirely and put her house on the market a month later. Rumor has it the new owners submitted and received approval for a gnome family. The new board, which I was politely asked to join, I declined, but offered to be a consultant, immediately got to work. We didn't go to court. Instead, we signed a simple, permanent easement. The HOA acknowledges the land is mine, and in return, I grant them the right to use it for the community for the sum of $1 per year. All my fines were wiped away. The bylaws were rewritten. The no-gnome rule was the first to go. The lawn composition rule was amended to allow for eco-friendly, drought-resistant ground covers like clover. Barnaby the gnome still stands by my azalea bush, but now he's got friends. A whole family of gnomes, a flamingo, and a spinning pinwheel. My lawn is a lush, green mix of grass and clover, and the bees love it. The best part? The new HOA president, a nice woman named Carol, brought me a basket of muffins last week. She said, "We're so glad you're here. You reminded us that a community is about people, not power." I just smiled. Sometimes you have to fight petty with the ultimate petty. And sometimes all it takes is one little gnome to bring down a tyrant.